Hi, everybody, and welcome to Lovefraud Live. I'll bet, just a guess, I'll bet that you're angry at the sociopath, as you should be. This person lied, betrayed, smeared, manipulated, and exploited you. It's eating you up inside. I'm Donna Andersen, author of Lovefraud.com, and tonight I'll explain what to do with your anger at the sociopath. At the end of my presentation, I'll answer your questions. So to join the chat or ask a question, please subscribe to this channel. When I finally realized that my husband, James Montgomery, had lied to me, cheated on me, and targeted me just to take my money, I was angry, furious, outraged. With each lie I discovered, my internal upheaval grew. Yes, he was cheating with multiple women and taking money from them as well. No, he was not a Hollywood screenwriter, although he pretended to be. And no, he had never served in the Australian military, even though he claimed to have won its highest honor. I felt the deep anger within me. I had a hard time concentrating on what I needed to do to extricate myself from this mess. I couldn't sleep. Perhaps you know what I mean. Dealing with anger was one of the topics in an audio course that I listened to about cognitive behavioral therapy. Cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT, is a form of psychotherapy that focuses on modifying dysfunctional emotions, thoughts, and behaviors. The objective of CBT is to solve particular life problems. The idea is that thoughts, emotions, and behavior all affect each other. Patients are asked to examine their thoughts, assess if they are accurate, and if not, overcome them. Some mental health professionals believe that CBT is the only type of psychotherapy that actually works. In my audio course, the instructor, who was a famous psychologist, asked the patient to consider an incident that had made him angry and discuss whether his reaction was proportionate to what had happened. Well, in my mind, the client had every right to be angry over the incident, but the instructor talked about ways to reduce anger, such as becoming aware of tension and deep breathing and mindfulness. Essentially, the instructor was teaching anger management. The basic message was that anger was bad and should be avoided. Not once did the instructor consider the idea that some anger is justified. So I'm not sure I totally agree with that approach. Anger is a protective emotion. It is rooted in the primitive part of the brain known as the limbic system. The job of the limbic system is to keep us alive. It is the home of our body's fight, flight, freeze, or friend response. So, anger is meant to protect us. It is meant to give us the emotional strength and fortitude to fight should it become necessary. Yeah, anger can get out of hand, and some people can seem to be perpetually angry. Too much anger can lead to health issues, such as heart problems. Still, there are times when anger is totally justified, such as when you're dealing with the behavior of a lying, cheating sociopath. Even though anger at a sociopath may be warranted, what do you do with it? Well, unfortunately, expressing your anger to the sociopath often does more harm than good. First of all, it may send the sociopath into a narcissistic rage with potentially dangerous consequences. Many sociopaths are violent, and provoking them, even when they deserve it, could be harmful to you. Secondly, sociopaths thrive on your emotional reactions. If you are so upset and so enraged by what they've done, they see this as proof of their control over you. They will then continue to do things that anger you, just so they can sit back and enjoy your outrage. The best way to shut the sociopath down is not to react at all. Even though you may be seething, don't let him or her see it. So, what do you do with your justified anger? Here's an important truth. Knowing why you are angry doesn't make it go away. Anger is a physical sensation. It needs to be dealt with physically. Now, many years ago, I went to a workshop presented by John Lee, who is author of the book called Facing the Fire: Experiencing and Expressing Anger Appropriately. Lee talked about his own experience with anger. He had grown up with an abusive parent and was angry about it. Well, hello, anger due to child abuse seems perfectly reasonable to me. Lee's advice was to do something physical to release the anger that does not cause harm to yourself, other people, or animals. Working out with punching bags, stomping your feet, twisting towels, breaking old cups and saucers into trash cans are some of his suggestions. The idea is to keep up the activity until you feel a physical release. Now, I can say that this approach works. When I was consumed by anger over my husband's betrayal, I remembered the workshop with John Lee, and I tried many of his suggestions. For me, the most effective release mechanism was envisioning my husband, James Montgomery's face on a pillow and beating it until I collapsed. I did this every time I felt that pulsing anger, usually when I discovered another new lie or betrayal. Well, in time, the anger dissipated. Remember, your anger at the sociopath hurts you, but not the sociopath. You need to get it out of your system. So try different methods until you discover what is most effective method for you, and then let it rip. Eventually, you'll feel a lot better. So, that's the presentation for tonight. Next, I'll answer your questions, and if you want in-depth advice about your own personal situation, I do offer consultations, plus a deep emotional release service to help get rid of the anger and other wounds. Okay, oh, wow, we got the chat going here today. That's great. So Sandra says she's raging still after 5 years. Well, then I suggest that you try some of the suggestions that I made in this video. It does work, and you just need to get it out of your system. And it needs to be done physically. You can't I don't think you can meditate your anger away or something like that, because it's, and if you're trying to do that, it may feel fake. So figure out a way to do it. I knew someone who went ice skating all the time, and I know someone else who after discovering that her ex was cheating on her and causing all kinds of havoc, this guy had this collection of cologne bottles, and so they took all the bottles outside and smashed them against the wall. And whatever it is, you need to find some physical activity that doesn't hurt you or any important property or your pets or other people. Just find some physical activity to get the anger out of your system. Oh, okay. So AM says, So happy to catch this, Donna. What is happening to mothers who protect children from abuse from courts is horrific. Proxy abusers, stalkers start from the mob, never ending. Yeah, that's certainly a mess. And you feel so helpless, because it's the sociopath with the sociopathic lawyer and the courts that just want you to go away, and professionals who can be bought off, and all this other kind of stuff. Believe it or not, I think my advice still stands, even if you're dealing with that kind of situation, because if you can get the anger out of your system, or do the best you can to get the anger out of your system, then if you have to go to court, you're not walking in like a powder keg that's ready to explode, because if you are like teed up and really tense with justifiable anger, the sociopath will try to provoke you. And then if you react and get snide or make comments or roll your eyes or whatever, the sociopath has just convinced the judge that you're the problem. So it's really important to get the anger out of your system, so that when you do have one of these moments of truth, so to speak, when you do have to go to court or a hearing or anything like that, that you can maintain your cool and that you can be calm. So it definitely works. Okay, so Fake Horse says, I just want to delete the last 16 months of my life. I'm really struggling with how he has convinced everyone that I'm crazy, manipulative, etc. And how do I help myself to move forward in loving my own truth? Well, you're actually discussing two things here, one of which is dealing with the smear campaign, and the other is loving your own truth. So when it comes to the smear campaign, which is what they do to manipulate other people to think that you're crazy and whatever else he's telling them, it's just what they do, and it's unbelievable. They're unbelievably good at it. It's just hard to overcome that. So what you might have to do is figure out who is important to you and who really needs to know the truth, and do your best to tell your side of the story to those people. And the other people you might just have to let go. I mean, it's not fair. The sociopath is the one that's doing it. But if those other people aren't strongly enough in your corner to believe you instead of him, then they're not friends. I mean, they're not necessarily the people that you want to have in your life. And other people, may just be casual acquaintances, and in cases like that, it's like, oh well. So what you can do is look at who's hearing these messages, figure out who is important to you, see what you can do to help them, and then, to help them understand, and then the rest of the people, you write them off. Now, as far as your recovery goes, this is part of it. Learning to deal with the anger will help a lot. Beyond that, you also need to deal with the rest of the emotion, because there's grief, there's disappointment, there's betrayal. All these emotions, you need to allow yourself to feel them, and because the process of feeling it is how they get out of your system. The same idea is with the anger, is that, by allowing yourself to actually feel what your emotions are, that's how you move forward. That's how you recover. My ex always loved getting me angry, and I hate myself when I'm rageful. I used to be a holding technique for my 6-year-old son. When he was angry, it helped him get his anger out safely. Okay, well, if you can help your 6-year-old get the anger out safely, then figure out a way to do it for yourself. And recognize that, as I said before, the sociopath loves when they provoke you. It's entertainment for them. So you have to figure out a way to blow off steam privately, not with them around, so that when they start their antics, you can just kind of roll your eyes and go, there he goes again, and not react. You do not want to give the sociopath the satisfaction of reacting when he can see you. Okay, so Sandra says, have you heard Dr. Jordan Peterson talk negatively of CBT? No, I haven't. That's kind of my own opinion. I'm certainly not an expert about CBT. I just, as I said, took an audio course on it. I've heard it described as useful, but this was just this one aspect of how they treated anger just kind of struck me as like, not sure about that one, but it could be effective in other areas. Okay, so Fake Horse says, it's been a month since I stopped contact. How do I stop myself from sending rageful messages? Okay, if you're sending rageful messages, that means you're still in contact. I mean, even if you aren't seeing this person, no contact means no contact. It means no talking to them, no messages, no texts, no showing up at their house, no phone calls, and no visiting their social media pages. So I'd say that so far, if you're sending messages, you're not quite on the wagon yet, and so you have to make up your mind that you're done and you're not going to have contact with this person, and then you stop. Okay? So, if you have anger, which I guess you do, since you're sending rageful messages, deal with the anger. Okay? The way I suggested, allow yourself to experience it in some physical way that is safe to you and the people around you and your property, etc. So, you just got to find a way to get it out of your system. And the more you can do that, the less inclined you'll feel to try and send the messages. So the idea is to deal with your emotions. So Peter asks, can we create a lawful national list of psychopaths, sociopaths, just like we have a list of sex offenders? I'm not sure you could do that. But what you could do is have a list of people who've been charged with domestic violence or charged with child abuse or something like that. There would definitely be legal liability in trying to, first of all, label people as psychopaths or sociopaths and then publicize it. That's asking for lawsuits. I can tell you that. But if somebody has been arrested or even convicted, that's a different story because that's a public record. Oh, okay. So Sandra explains a little further. Dr. Jordan says that using CBT therapy for trauma is like telling the victim that their feelings are wrong. Then yeah, I would certainly agree with that. You can't think your way out of, making trauma go away. Trauma needs to be dealt with by someone who is a trauma professional. And, there's a lot to it. And the one thing that you don't want to do is blame the victim. And so in that kind of case, yeah, I would say that that's an issue. So, thank you for bringing that up. I wasn't aware of it, but yeah, I would agree with that. Okay, so Sandra says, I've done DBT, CBT, talk therapy, 2 styles, parts of self, EMDR. None made a dramatic change. EMDR, now doing Sandra Brown, PLR course, that's helping. Yeah. The key to really getting over this experience is emotional healing. And some things like CBT doesn't address emotional healing. Okay, it's like, well, let's see if we can think and change our thoughts and then, create behaviors to go with that. My understanding is DBT is a little bit better. You could put your opinion on that. But this is the solution is the emotional recovery. And what that means is allowing yourself to feel and then release your actual pain. Well, AM says you're not accepting a proposal. That's good. Glad to hear that. Mom with Phone says journaling helps. Yeah, that can certainly be a good tool. And, one of the things about journaling is that it can also help with anger and all your emotions, because once you write it down and get it on a piece of paper, it's out of your head. And so that means, you can release it to the paper, to the book, or whatever your journal is. And that can really help a lot. I mean, I did an awful lot of journaling when I was going through all my experiences. And yes, I agree that it does help. Fake Horse says she hasn't sent the messages, but keep coming very close. Okay. Well, I'm glad you're not sending the messages. That's good, because it's counterproductive. I mean, as I said, if you send a message like this, essentially what you're telling the sociopath is that this person still has control over you, because you're still emotionally wrapped up with this. And so you're just feeding them. And you don't want to do that. You want to disengage. You want to get out of this situation. So maybe, write these text messages and then delete them, or send them to yourself, or maybe you don't want to even do that, or whatever. But definitely continue to not send them to the sociopath. All right, so Sandra Brown says not to, Sandra Plough is reporting on Sandra Brown, who says not to journal about the ex. It's rehashing your narrative. I'm not sure I agree with that. You do have, as I said, the key is allowing yourself to feel the emotions. And in order to do that, you do have to remember what happened. I mean, that's how you process the emotions, that you remember an incident, you allow the emotions to come up, and if you can just be with the emotion, whether it's anger, betrayal, grief, disappointment, whatever it is, if you could just hold it and be with it, it dissipates, it dissolves. And when you do that, that's how you recover. So I think it's useful. I mean, you can't shut down your brain. You can't pretend it's not there. If you're doing that, essentially you're pushing everything down. Which is kind of like building another powder keg. A powder keg of some other kind of emotion. So that's not helpful. I don't think that's helpful. AM sounds like you got your hands full. I'm so sorry about all that. Okay, and also AM says people ought to try different things to find out what works. That's absolutely true. We're all different. So what works for you may not work for me, which may not work for her, but will work for him or whatever. So we're all different people. We all have different biology, different chemistry. different experiences. And so, yes, recovery is highly personal. So you need to find what works for you. And as far as listening to intuition, absolutely. That's the best thing that will always protect you. Your intuition is there to protect you. And that's actually one of the reasons why you want to deal with the emotional upset and the anger, because when you have all that emotion inside, it's very difficult for you to hear your intuition. You're hyper vigilant. You're always looking around, seeing what's going on. So the more you can get the angst out of your system, for whatever type of angst you have, the more you can be centered and relaxed, the more you can hear your intuition, which will protect you. So it all feeds on itself. So dealing with the emotion is unpleasant. It's a bumpy ride, but it's definitely worth it. So, okay. Thank you, everybody, for joining me this evening, and we'll be here next week. Oh, wait, maybe we won't. I believe next week is the 4th of July. So if next week is the 4th of July, hang on a second. Let me take a look at the calendar here. Yes, next week is the 4th of July. So in 2 weeks, we'll be back with the next episode of Lovefraud Live. Good night, everybody.